Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary stands in Kansas as more than just a building. Its red brick towers, iron gates, and sprawling cell blocks have been witness to more than a century of confinement, discipline, and intrigue. Constructed in 1903 as one of the first federal prisons in the United States, Leavenworth was designed to house the most dangerous men in the country. It became a symbol of federal authority, law, and order, a place where escape was supposed to be impossible and punishment absolute. Yet behind its fortified walls, the penitentiary held secrets that most people never knew. Stories of corruption, covert alliances among inmates, and unexplained incidents were whispered quietly among prisoners and guards alike. Even the oldest officers, who had walked its corridors for decades, would sometimes pause and remark on the inexplicable events they had witnessed. The architecture itself was intended to intimidate. Massive iron doors, thick stone walls, and endless corridors created a labyrinthine environment designed to crush spirits and eliminate hope. From the main cell blocks to the solitary confinement units, every space radiated authority and control. But the very walls that were supposed to contain men often became a canvas for ingenuity and subversion. Life inside Leavenworth was strict, regimented, and inescapably routine. Every day followed a rigid timetable: wake-up calls, breakfast, labor assignments, counts, lights out. Yet even in this regimented environment, prisoners found ways to manipulate the system. Some formed secret societies within the walls, creating networks that allowed contraband to circulate undetected. Others developed intricate methods to communicate across cells, messages hidden in books, food trays, or even whispered through plumbing. Perhaps one of the most surprising aspects of Leavenworth was the diversity of inmates it held. From hardened gang members to white-collar criminals, political prisoners to notorious bank robbers, the penitentiary became a microcosm of American criminal enterprise. And each inmate left behind stories, small and large, that contributed to the prison's mystique. Among the earliest inmates were men who would later shape criminal folklore in the United States. Their names were etched into history, not only because of their crimes but because of their audacity inside the prison walls. Some became infamous for their cunning escapes, others for their ability to manipulate both guards and fellow prisoners. Every corner of Leavenworth seemed to carry a shadow of these figures, ghosts of ingenuity and menace that lingered in the hallways long after they had passed. Even the guards were part of the story. While many were dedicated professionals committed to upholding justice, there were those whose corruption allowed the flow of illegal items and contraband. Occasionally, a bribe would slip through or a tool would disappear, leading to whispers about the inside network that kept the prison functioning in a precarious balance between order and chaos. Work assignments within the prison often became a double-edged sword. While labor was meant to instill discipline, it also created opportunities for planning and secrecy. Inmates working in kitchens, laundries, or maintenance could observe weak points in the prison's infrastructure: an unlocked gate, a poorly lit corridor, a door that jammed easily. These small observations, trivial to most, could become critical for those with ambition or desperation. Even solitary confinement had its lessons. Men who spent weeks in isolation often returned with heightened awareness, having studied guard patterns, structural weaknesses, and the behavior of fellow prisoners. Some used the time to craft tools or memorize the architecture of the prison, quietly preparing for a moment when opportunity would present itself. Despite its reputation as a fortress of justice, Leavenworth was not immune to tragedy. Fires, fights, and unexplained deaths left indelible marks on the history of the institution. Every incident, carefully logged in official reports, had an undercurrent of mystery, rumors of hidden motives, secret alliances, and subtle manipulations. Guards who spoke of these events often did so in hushed tones, aware that the penitentiary's reputation depended on maintaining the illusion of absolute control. Even visitors to the prison sensed its power. The weight of history, the presence of danger, and the strict enforcement of rules created an atmosphere unlike any other institution. For families and journalists, the penitentiary was both fascinating and terrifying, a living relic of the country's approach to federal incarceration. By the mid-20th century, Leavenworth had evolved from a simple containment facility into a complex ecosystem of power dynamics, covert operations, and institutional intrigue. Each inmate and guard played a role in a delicate balance that, if disturbed, could ripple across the entire prison. It became clear that the greatest secrets of Leavenworth were not hidden in official reports, but in the lived experiences of the men who walked its corridors. And as history continued, one thing remained constant: the walls whispered. For those who listened, the prison offered lessons about survival, power, and the surprising ways humans adapt even under the strictest control. The secrets of Leavenworth were many, layered and sometimes dangerous, but always compelling. If you want, I can write Chapter 2, continuing the story with more shocking and mysterious true incidents inside Leavenworth, narration ready, cinematic, and immersive. Leavenworth's story did not end with its towering walls or its infamous inmates. If anything, the true secrets of the penitentiary were hidden in the spaces most people never noticed, behind doors, under floors, and in the shadows where the eye of authority rarely lingered. By the 1970s, Leavenworth had become a complex ecosystem of control, manipulation, and subtle rebellion. Inmates learned quickly that power inside the prison was never dictated solely by strength or violence. Intelligence, cunning, and influence were far more valuable. A man could survive in Leavenworth not because he was the strongest, but because he understood the invisible threads connecting guards, fellow inmates, and the institution itself. Some of the most fascinating stories involved the prison's hidden networks. Prisoners who worked in the kitchens, laundries, and library became the silent operators of communication lines that spanned the facility. Messages slipped through the hands of guards, items vanished only to reappear elsewhere, and rumors spread faster than official announcements. These invisible networks allowed inmates to maintain a sense of control over their lives, a subtle power that many outsiders never understood. One of the more remarkable tales involved a group of men who, over months, studied the daily routines of correctional officers. They observed which guards were predictable, which corridors were lightly patrolled, and which doors consistently failed to lock correctly. While most of the prison population lived day to day, some of these men were mapping the institution with the precision of engineers and tacticians. Though few ever attempted escape, these observations demonstrated a truth. Even the oldest, most fortified prisons were vulnerable to careful planning. Leavenworth also held men whose reputations extended beyond the walls. Bank robbers, notorious gang members, and white-collar criminals alike brought their histories and ambitions into the prison. Some attempted to continue their criminal enterprises from behind bars, smuggling contraband, coordinating schemes, or influencing events on the outside through visitors and corrupt staff. Each scheme was small and secretive, yet each chipped away at the perception that the prison was an impenetrable fortress. Perhaps the most surprising element of Leavenworth was its culture of adaptation. Inmates who arrived expecting punishment often discovered opportunities. The prison system, strict as it was, unintentionally taught them lessons in resourcefulness. Men who mastered these lessons could navigate life behind bars with a kind of strategic brilliance, sometimes outwitting those who were supposed to control them. Despite the focus on survival and manipulation, danger was never far away. Fights erupted over small slights, alliances shifted overnight, and the presence of violence hung like a storm cloud over every wing. Yet even in these violent moments, the prison had its rules. Each incident was catalogued, investigated, and eventually woven into the daily routines that maintained order. These contradictions, freedom within confinement, chaos within structure, were what made Leavenworth a world unlike any other. Over the decades, a pattern emerged. Leavenworth's greatest secrets were not the stories of violence, but the quiet ingenuity of those inside. Inmates discovered that small actions, learning a guard's habits, understanding structural weaknesses, or communicating cleverly, could yield profound results. While some used these skills to attempt escape, others leveraged them to gain influence and safety within the walls. Even the architecture itself played a hidden role. The prison's original design, though imposing, included long corridors, maintenance tunnels, and service areas that had become worn with age. For those who knew the facility well, these spaces were opportunities to move unseen, to communicate across blocks, or to hide from the ever-watchful eyes of authority. The prison's oldest features, intended for security, paradoxically offered the most potential for secrecy. And yet, for all its secrets, Leavenworth remained a symbol. It was a place where America's criminal justice system tested its ideals of punishment and rehabilitation. It was a reminder that confinement could shape behavior, but could never fully erase ingenuity, ambition, or the desire for freedom. Visitors who walked the prison grounds often remarked on the sense of history pressing down from the walls. Each brick seemed to hold a story, each shadow a secret. The penitentiary was a living archive, not just of crime and punishment, but of human resilience, adaptation, and sometimes rebellion. As time went on, the stories of Leavenworth evolved. Corruption scandals emerged, escapes were attempted, and reports of mysterious events, missing items, unexplained noises, subtle manipulations, continued to surface. But through it all, one lesson remained clear. The oldest federal penitentiary in the United States had endured because of its walls, its rules, and its ability to adapt, Yet the true legacy of Leavenworth lay in the ingenuity of the men who lived within them. By the end of the century, Leavenworth was no longer just a prison. It was a repository of secrets, a study in power, and a testament to the human spirit, even under the strictest confinement. Its shadows whispered stories to anyone willing to listen, stories of cunning, survival, and the surprising ways individuals navigated life behind bars. In the end, the greatest secrets of Leavenworth were not written in reports or news articles. They existed quietly in the corridors behind the gates, and within the minds of those who understood how to live, adapt, and endure inside America's most storied federal penitentiary.